Nigerian President Tinubu has appointed new service chiefs as part of efforts to strengthen national security. Now, the Nigerian government replaced the Chief of Defense Staff as well as those of the Army, Navy, and Air Force.
Welcome back to Voice of Africa. In today's report, we take a closer look at one of the most talked about developments in Nigeria: the sudden arrest of several military officers and the unexpected reshuffle within the armed forces. The news caught the nation's attention, sparking conversations, speculation, and concern about what could really be happening behind closed doors. When reports first emerged that around 16 to 20 officers had been taken into custody for what the military described as disciplinary reasons, Nigerians were left with more questions than answers. Was it really a disciplinary issue, or was something deeper unfolding? Some analysts even suggested that a coup attempt might have been quietly suppressed, while others believed the shakeup was a strategic move to prevent one. From what I've observed, there are two possible explanations that seem most convincing. The first is that there might have been a real plan to destabilize the system. The second is that the government acted swiftly to remove any potential threat before it could take shape. Either way, this is not a small matter. In the Nigerian military structure, even a simple disagreement or careless conversation about politics can be interpreted as disloyalty or an attempt to overthrow the government. The military is a regimented body. Loyalty is its backbone. If two serving officers are overheard complaining about civilian leadership, that alone can trigger suspicion. Someone could easily report them, and that single report could end their careers or even land them in detention. So, it's easy to see how something minor might escalate into allegations of conspiracy. But what the government needs to understand is that silence often fuels more speculation. Nigerians deserve clarity. If there was indeed a coup plot, people have the right to know the truth. If there wasn't, the government should also communicate that clearly. Keeping citizens in the dark only damages trust and gives room for misinformation to thrive. Another part of this story that has raised eyebrows is the recent reshuffling of top military officers, a move that many believe is linked to these developments. The president replaced the Chief of Defense Staff, the chiefs of the Air Force and Navy, and appointed a new Chief of Army Staff. On paper, these changes appear routine. But when we look deeper, the timing and structure of these appointments suggest otherwise. The newly appointed Chief of Army Staff comes from Course 41, meaning that officers from Courses 39 and 40 will have to step aside. This automatically pushes out dozens of senior officers, many of whom have years of experience. The fact that the government skipped an entire course, Course 40, has led many to wonder whether it was a loyalty decision rather than one based purely on merit. It gives the impression that those from the skipped group were not fully trusted to hold the top position. From a political point of view, this is significant. Appointing someone from Course 41 means that close to 50 generals might now be forced to retire early. This kind of mass exit can only happen if the government believes there is a strong reason to restructure the chain of command. And in Nigeria's context, that reason is almost always linked to loyalty. If we look at the country's history, every major change in military leadership has followed the same pattern: leaders keeping those they trust close and removing anyone they suspect might not share their vision. Former presidents like Muhammadu Buhari followed this model, keeping his service chiefs in office for years, despite public criticism. He was once asked why he refused to replace them, and his answer was telling. He simply felt comfortable with them. To him, loyalty mattered more than popularity or pressure from the public. Now, under the current administration, we are seeing a similar pattern, but with a slightly different strategy. The appointment of the new army chief from Kogi State, a region in north-central Nigeria, has a political undertone. Some analysts believe it's a calculated move to strengthen ties with the Middle Belt, a region often caught between the northern and southern blocs. It's a way to show inclusion while still maintaining balance in the military's ethnic representation. In fact, this new wave of appointments reflects a subtle but deliberate attempt to achieve geographical balance. Every major region now has some level of representation within the service chiefs. For once, there's a sense of fairness, at least on paper. But beyond representation, the real question remains. Can these new leaders bring change to Nigeria's worsening security crisis? The new Chief of Army Staff, Major General Widu, is known to be an exceptionally brilliant officer. He topped his class and holds multiple academic degrees, including 3 masters and a PhD candidacy in strategic studies. His record shows that he's not just a soldier, but also a thinker, someone capable of approaching modern security challenges with new ideas. Many within the Army describe him as disciplined, sharp, and deeply committed to his work. With his experience, expectations are high that he can bring fresh energy into the fight against terrorism, banditry, and other forms of violence that have plagued Nigeria for over a decade. But his success will depend not only on his skill, but also on his ability to navigate the internal politics that come with such a powerful position. As history has shown, brilliance alone does not guarantee survival in Nigeria's military leadership. There are always unseen forces, political, economic, and sometimes spiritual, that shape outcomes in that environment. Nevertheless, Nigerians are hoping that his appointment will translate into real improvements on the ground. There have been gradual gains in security over recent years. The intensity of terrorist attacks has reduced compared to the dark days when suicide bombings became almost routine. Back then, people in the Northeast lived in constant fear. Christians hesitated to go to church on Sundays, Muslims feared attending Friday prayers, and markets closed early because no one felt safe. The idea of a Nigerian suicide bomber once seemed impossible until it happened. While insurgency still exists, it has evolved into different forms. Banditry has become the new face of insecurity, especially in northern and central states. Some argue that these bandits are just remnants of Boko Haram, but others believe they are new groups taking advantage of weak governance and widespread poverty. What's clear is that the fight must continue not just with weapons, but also with community engagement, education, and rehabilitation. Many of the young men involved were radicalized after losing parents or being exposed to extremist teachings. They need more than bullets. They need hope. The situation in Benue and Plateau states, however, is a separate tragedy of its own. These two regions have seen cycles of violence described by local leaders as genocide. The killings are often blamed on ethnic or religious tensions, but the deeper truth lies in land ownership, politics, and power struggles. The governors of both states have repeatedly said that the violence is systematic and organized. Yet peace remains elusive because of the layers of betrayal and inside collaboration that sustain it. I've spoken to people from these areas who believe the solution will not come solely from the military. True peace will only come when the people themselves, especially the political class, decide that enough is enough. Many of the crises began years ago when local politicians armed young men to secure their political ambitions. When the elections ended, the weapons were never retrieved, and those same youths turned their guns on their own communities. There's always an insider involved in these conflicts. It could be a local informant, a corrupt official, or even a member of the security forces leaking intelligence to attackers. One story from Benue illustrates this perfectly. During a security operation, officers tried several times to capture a notorious kidnapper, but each time they arrived, the suspect had already fled. Later, it was discovered that one of the security men was secretly working with the criminals. They only succeeded when they stopped sharing details of their mission beforehand. This is why many experts argue that Nigeria needs state police, locally trained officers who understand their communities, languages, and terrain. Federal forces often lack this connection. Look at Borno State. The fight against Boko Haram only turned around when civilian JTF members, local hunters, and vigilantes joined the military effort. They knew the land, the people, and the enemy. That's the kind of community-driven approach that must be replicated across the country. Of course, there are fears that state police could be abused by governors or used for political purposes, but that risk already exists with the federal police. The key is to build strong laws and oversight mechanisms to prevent abuse while empowering communities to protect themselves. Security should not just be a national policy, it should be a local partnership. As the dust settles on these military changes, Nigerians are watching closely to see what direction the new leadership will take. Will this reshuffle mark the beginning of a more transparent and efficient military? Or will it be remembered as another political maneuver hidden behind talk of loyalty and reform? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: communication is vital. The government must speak to its people with honesty and clarity. Silence creates fear, and fear breeds instability. For a nation as large and diverse as Nigeria, truth and trust remain its strongest weapons against chaos. And so, as we continue to follow developments within the armed forces and across the states, one hope remains: that these changes will lead not just to new faces in uniform, but to new ideas, stronger unity, and lasting peace. This is Voice of Africa, giving you the real story in the voice of the people.